Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome once again to the live weekly webinar presented by Affinity Federal Credit Union. My name is Oscar Cordova, and I'm the External Affairs and Financial Education Manager here at Affinity, in charge of the financial education efforts for the credit union in all of the areas that we serve. Today's topic is digital payment network fraud. So we are going to be learning a little bit about what a digital payment network is and how to avoid becoming victims of fraud. Okay. Today's presenter, her name is Veronica Hernandez. Veronica works with our risk and fraud department. So she deals with fraud on a daily basis. And so I encourage everybody to ask questions. If you think of a question during the webinar, please don't wait to ask it at the end. Go ahead and open up the Q&A option on your panel and write the question in. Veronica will be more than happy to address all of the questions at the end of the webinar, okay? Also, this webinar is being recorded, so you guys will receive a follow-up email about half an hour after it ends, with the link to be able to rewatch the webinar at your leisure time. And also, before we begin, I think there is a brief disclaimer, and the disclaimer states that the information provided to everybody this afternoon is intended to be for educational purposes. It is not intended to be legal, tax, or financial advice. If you want to have a conversation with a professional and you want to discuss something that's going on in your life, feel free to reach out, and I'll be more than happy to put you in touch with somebody that can have this conversation on a one-on-one basis and can advise. But all of the information provided this afternoon is intended to be informational purposes only. With that said, I'll turn it over to Veronica. Veronica, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and presenting this great topic to our audience.
Thank you so much, Oscar, and welcome everyone to this month's webinar for digital payment fraud. Hopefully we can discuss a few things that we're seeing nowadays and how individuals may fall victim to scams through digital payments and what to look out for to prevent that from happening. So digital payments. They have certainly made our lives easier. It's easier to transfer funds to friends or family, or quickly pay someone for a product or service, your local flea market or location or mall for small vendors. But there's a lot of work to do. And there's a lot of understanding that needs to take place just because of the amount of fraud that could happen through these sources, through these digital payment methods. So let's start by just defining what that means. Digital payments are simply services that are built into your online banking, whether it be at a credit union or at a bank. It allows you to easily send and receive funds from people you know and trust automatically without having to provide specifically your account information. And we all know just how valuable an account number is. So these types of features really do help to not have to share that the way you may with a traditional check against your checking account. And it's just sent using your phone number or your email address. Things that we often may share with friends while not necessarily our account information. So what are some of the benefits? Absolutely the simplicity and the speed. The dashboards or the interfaces for those particular services, they're very easy to use. As we mentioned earlier, you usually just have to have someone's phone number or email to be able to send it out. As long as you're already connected, you just punch in their information and off the funds go for, let's say, an afternoon ice cream purchase. Account connectivity, because it is within your online banking at a bank or at a credit union, you can automatically choose where you want funds to be sent to if you receive payment, as well as where you want funds to be pulled from if you're sending payment. They're definitely popular nowadays. Very often we find that carrying cash is not always automatic or assumed anymore, especially because of these types of features. It just makes it a lot easier to move it back and forth. And, if it's not connected to your institution, then you can always use it outside separately through their own application. So you still have that ability, even if your financial institution does not offer that particular service. We all also have, for the most part, smartphones. Not all of us, but many of us do have smartphones where we are more comfortable with performing these types of transactions or using these types of features through our smartphones, regardless of what kind it is, whether it's an Apple phone or an Android, whatever it may be. It also has additional security features. Think of your online banking at the credit union. You do have to have information linked to it that ties back to you. You do have a username and password, and many times those are, they need to be at a certain level of complexity in order to be able to use them, length, to have additional security through that. We also have multi-factor authentication, which means, if you use the service many times, a text message will be sent or a phone call will be made to your phone number on file. And without that code or without responding to those communications, the transaction won't be completed. So that additional level of security, that additional difficulty to access it, those are some great benefits that are tied to this. It's not just something standing outside or no additional passwords. It does require information to be able to use it. But what are some of the drawbacks? Well, sophisticated scammers. What we mean by that is, unfortunately, scammers nowadays are becoming very, very advanced in the way that they present scams to possible victims. It's possible that they are able to try and communicate to you with a code or a communication that may look very legitimate, but may not be tied to wherever it's purporting to be from. For an example, if any of you have received an Amazon email, it's very important to really look at those sites, look at those emails, look at those communications to be able to really be able to signal that this is not an authentic communication. So it's becoming easier for them to try and pose as other institutions or merchants to try and fool customers and members. The transactions are fast, so scammers tend to go down this route because it takes almost just seconds to add a new payee to send funds to. And the funds, once they are gone, it's almost like throwing cash, let's say, out of the fifth floor on Fifth Avenue in New York City. It's as simple as that, just sending it out into the world. There's also the drawback that you may be sending it to the wrong person. Let's say you're sending it to a phone number. If you don't verify that that is the correct phone number or email, it's possible that another individual will be getting that deposit. As I mentioned earlier, once the funds are sent, we are not able to reverse that transaction. It's very permanent. And anyone can become a victim. And this is important to mention because it's not a particular group or area or profession. This is something that unfortunately affects everyone if we are not paying attention to the communications or methods that you may be contacted by these scammers. And if we are nowadays operating very quickly, to do something very easily, we might not be able to pick up on those small warnings that something's off or this request doesn't make sense, not quite. So remember that. Also, the two-step verification. If someone asks you for that information by posing a particular scenario, let's say, hey, we're going to need that code to secure your money or maybe to stop your profile or anything along those lines, you may instantly want to satisfy that request to secure your information, but it's always important to know that you really want to be sure who's asking you to provide that information. Remember that many times those communications, they will say that your financial institution will not request this code. or your financial institution will not call you to confirm this transaction or ask you to send this transaction. So pay attention to those disclosures or those warnings. Use those as a moment to pause. Does this really make sense? Because again, once transactions are sent, it's nearly impossible to try and reverse them. And what are some of the additional examples or scams that are actively being used by fraudsters to victims? Well, fraudsters can send text messages to individuals claiming to be from their financial institution or their credit card company, warning them of unusual activity. Remember, be sure to review those communications. Are they really from your financial institution or from your credit card company? And if you're not sure, remember, if it's going to you, the only way you can confirm is if you are the one reaching out through a confirmed phone number or email or extension. Fraudsters also call those who respond to text messages. So if you get a communication and you don't recognize it, or the grammar is incorrect, or it doesn't give any specific information to you, like your name or your card number or your account number, take pause and remember, double check who is reaching out to you. The only way to confirm is if you're the one reaching out to those verified phone numbers or emails. The fraudster may ask you for your online banking, at which point they may say, hey, we're going to send you a code. Remember, when you get that code, they will specifically include that we will never ask you for that information. And that's something very similar to other financial institutions as well. So this is one of those things that applies regardless of where you bank. Remember, you don't ever want to share that. That's only for you to actually access your accounts. The fraudsters may use the username and features such as forgot password to prompt a legitimate code to go to you to try and change or access your account information online. So remember, unless you're the one logging in, you've typed in the website, you're going in, you don't want to provide any information or provide codes that you receive because it may very well be them trying to log in when you're providing the information. Once you provide information like that and they are able to get into online banking, think of the information that's available through that access point. You have your account numbers, you have your transactions, and you have direct deposits. So it is truly like leaving the door open to a home. Once you open that door, everything within it is at their access or within their fingertips to try and transact or send funds out. So once that happens, if you have any concerns, you want to make sure to reach out right away. Absolutely right away, because time is of the essence at that point, and your financial institutions may be able to restrict or lock access until everything is straightened out and things can be verified. So, how do you avoid becoming a victim? Well, I can absolutely say when they tell you to change those passwords every few weeks or every few months, they are not kidding. Very often, you want to change them constantly. You want to make sure that they are long, that they are complex, and that way you really build up that security. Consider not saving your device. That way, every time you log in, it requires that code or that call to be sent out for you to confirm that it truly is you. Don't provide information to anyone that calls you, emails you, or texts you out of the blue. Remember, if it's coming into you to communicate to you, you can't be 100% sure who that is. Through methods like spoofing, unfortunately, it may look like it's coming from a particular number, but unless you're the one dialing that number, there's no way to be 100% sure. Sign up for text message and email alerts. That is such a lifesaver. I personally have it on my card for any type of transaction. I have it for any sort of transaction in online banking. And yes, that may be a little bit overboard, but there is some peace in knowing that every time something moves, you will be notified of it. And if something is not something you recognize or that you did not perform, then again, time is of the essence and you can communicate with your financial institution to let them know that something is wrong. And don't ignore warnings from your financial institutions or merchants. Nowadays, especially as you may have seen emails be received by your inbox or communications on full websites. This is something that's happening across the board, not only at just financial institutions, but also merchants. These scammers are becoming much, much smarter in what they're producing, very much so acting as though it is urgent to get this done right away before you can think about it and before you can stop anything from happening. So make sure, don't ignore when those little pop-ups come up or you get those emails saying, hey, just a warning, this is happening, keep an eye out. And of course, always communicate if something does not sound right. And I got a little ahead of myself, as you can see the first bullet. Well, what if you do become a victim? What if you're not able to catch those signs? You're not able to really differentiate, and something happens and you do become a victim. Well, like I said, you want to reach out as soon as possible to your financial institution. Time is of the essence. The faster you can work, the better. If there are transactions that you do not recognize, you want to make sure you go through the process of disputing those transactions and going to see what your next step needs to be. This is considered when these transactions take place as a minor form of identity theft, as they are performed by someone purporting to be you. So we absolutely recommend filing a report with the Federal Trade Commission. They actually keep a lot of statistics like this as far as the number of victims that have fallen for these types of scams year in and year out. And we are very much so of the mind that if you don't report it, then nothing will ever come of it. So we definitely encourage for these things to be reported. You can actually reach them by phone. You can also reach them at the link provided here. And also, one that's not specifically mentioned here, it's ic3.gov. That's actually a website that allows you to file cybercrime complaints. So even if you receive a spam text message or call, it's something that you're able to provide there. That way it's just documented. Again, we are very much about documenting these types of transactions. Hopefully down the line, the scammers or fraudsters are able to get caught. But the first step is by filing a claim or submitting and reporting. In addition to that documentation, sometimes you may have to file a police report. Again, just for that type of documentation to be able to see what can be done. It's always good just to know exactly what happened, and hopefully you or anyone else may not fall victim to those same scammers again. And of course, monitor your accounts. We truly rely on our members to tell us when something is wrong, when something isn't right, when something doesn't add up, when you did not perform something. So make sure to set up those alerts, monitor your accounts, review those statements for any unusual activity. Oftentimes, fraudulent transactions may start off as very small transactions or charges until they become a much more substantial amount. So keep an eye, keep your eyes open, and if something doesn't sound right, doesn't look right, absolutely reach out to us to let us know. And thank you everyone for your time. Hopefully we have some questions today.
Thank you so much, Veronica, for such great presentation. Yeah, at this point, I would like to open up the floor for any questions that any one of you may have. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and you guys will receive the link to be able to rewatch it or share it with friends and family. Also, in that follow-up email that I'll be sending, you'll see a recording, not a recording, a link to register for next week's webinar, which will happen on Thursday at 5, Thursday the 27th at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and the topic will be Investing 101. So if you have an investment portfolio or are looking to get into the market and invest some money, this is the webinar to be at to understand the basics of investing. With that said, let me take a look if there's any questions pending. Oh, yep, there is one. And it reads, I have been getting texts and emails from unknown persons. I send the emails to spam, but they keep coming back into my inbox. How do I stop them?
That's a great question, and it's something that I am personally experiencing as well. So you are not alone in that. The difficult part about it, right, is that you may put them in your spam folder, or if you get text messages, you can report it as spam to your service provider. But what they're doing nowadays is that they're really just sending mass messages out, and what they're looking for is, one, does a message or text message bounce back as not a valid number? But as soon as they have a valid one, they'll just keep trying to see when your guard will go down and possibly click on something or provide something. So the biggest thing I can say is, set certain parameters in your email to try and automatically move those over to your spam box. You can try and create a different email address, but that's not necessarily going to solve the answer. I'm sorry, solve the problem, since they're just going to keep trying to send emails in different combinations to try and get your attention. The same thing with the phone number. Many times what these scammers are doing is that they're just taking a series of numbers and just changing a few and just sending that over and over and over again. So the best I can suggest is just make sure you watch what you're receiving. If you know that it's not right, definitely report it. Reporting is so important, because then your email service provider as well as your phone service provider will be aware. So if these are being sent from a particular phone number, they'll be able to hopefully take it down. So it's not just about deleting, you want to report them as well.
Fantastic. Very good. Next question actually is a double question. The first part of the question reads, do you recommend password generators?
As long as there is a password for the password generator, it's not a bad idea. If you ever seen those, they usually are significantly longer passwords that are suggested to you, but they're usually through a particular program, whether it be your browser or through your phone. There might be an application. Just remember that when you have all your passwords stored in one place, you want to make sure that the password for that password holder is truly a strong, difficult, and that you are frequently changing it, because if that password is able to be broken or somehow accessed or guessed, then it's not going to really be doing too much, since once they have access to that one main access, they'll be able to access everything else. So as long as you're using it with a good password and you're constantly changing it, then I don't see a harm in it. You just don't want to make sure that your password's, let's say your pet name or something like that.
Yeah, fantastic. And then the second part of it is it okay to keep my passwords in a keychain or password vault that is encrypted?
I think that kind of ties back to my first answer. That's not a problem at all, as long as you have those additional securities, you have that additional password, or you have, sometimes I've even seen that they have a 2-point verification. So you might be able to punch in the password, but then you need to accept it on a verified phone number that's yours, through fingerprint or a PIN, something along those lines. But it's those additional layers that really make it hard to be able to access that really sensitive and important information, which are your username and passwords.
All right, excellent. I don't see any more questions this afternoon. So with that said, I would like to bring this webinar to a close. I want to thank everybody for being here, for paying attention, I hope it was informative to all of you. I look forward to seeing all of you next week in the next installment of the weekly webinar. And I want to thank Veronica for spending her time presenting for us. Veronica, do you have any parting words?
Just thank you so much to everyone for your time this afternoon. And remember, if you're not sure, just stop, read, and reach out before going through any messages or emails. We will be more than happy to take that time to go if it's a verified communication, rather than having to try and safeguard your information, which we'll be happy to do. But if we can avoid you becoming a victim, that is our #1 goal.
Excellent, very good. So again, thank you so much for being here, and hope to see you guys next week. Have a great afternoon and have a good one. Bye-bye, everyone.